Welcome to Haunt Weekly.
Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
And this is Haunt Weekly, a weekly podcast for the haunted attraction and haunted house industry. Featuring everything from home haunts to big haunts, talking about haunt actors, haunt owners, haunt aficionados, and everything in between. And once again, we're recording live. Well, not so live by the time this goes live. We're recording live in the Lair of Despair. Live-ish.
Yeah.
The Lair of Despair, the home of our good friend and fellow haunter, Kyle. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I was just saying that, I think that this Lair of Despair name, which was not approved by me, but now is slowly being adopted by me, I'm now starting to feel like this is maybe the Lair of Despair.
This is the Lair of Despair. Last week we discussed the Chair of Despair.
Yeah, so there's a lot of despair.
There's a lot of despair in your life. I'm just saying. You might want to get that checked out sometime. I'm going to talk to someone about that. I'm just saying.
There's a lot of despair going on.
Yeah, but it's good to have you back.
Yeah.
And, I've got to say, this is an episode I'm really glad to have you.
Yeah, because we don't have a lot of experience with this.
Crystal and I know that even though we are very active in the haunt community, we've been haunting for a long time, and we go to a lot of haunts, we do not know everything, as it turns out. And one of the things we don't have perspective on is touch versus no-touch haunts, because neither of us have ever acted in one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm lucky.
Well, we've been in no-touch only.
Yeah, we've been in no-touch only, I should say. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, we've only ever worked in no-touch haunts. And we've been to a feely haunts that were pretty grabby-feely. Yeah. Even if they were no-touch on paper.
Yeah, officially.
Yeah.
It's one of those on-paper things. But yeah, so... Yeah. But acting in one, we have absolutely no perspective on. Kyle here will be our go-to guy.
Well, yeah, and my kind of background is I started off, as I was saying, last week, or a few weeks ago, whenever
It'll be last week.
Yeah, last week. Is that I started off learning in the basement of an art gallery. We created a haunted house, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we just started making this haunted house, and we were just like, well, of course we can touch people here. Yeah. We didn't know that there was a rule that other people had said not to. So I started off, I cut my teeth, not literally, but learning on, doing this. And it's in my blood. I actually sometimes struggle when I've worked for no-touch haunts because I'm like, oh wait, I can't, I push that too far. And then I've worked for y'all, I've worked at places here in New Orleans that were no-touch haunts. And then even in Salt Lake City, actually, I worked at a place that was kind of in between as well. Yeah. They had rules where certain actors could touch people, and they gave actually a lighted necklace, like a glow-in-the-dark necklace, that if you wanted to, to be touched, that kind of comes across wrong. But if you wanted an elevated experience,
right? If you consented to a more intense experience,
that's a good way to put it. Then you had that, and so certain actors could touch certain people. So it's kind of a middle ground.
I think we have to title this one "Touch Me."
Yeah, that's a great.
Yes.
But yeah. And actually, not only the haunt in St. Louis, but I know Eastern State Penn does the exact same thing with the collar, the lighted collar.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, a moment of clarity here for everyone. When we're talking about touch versus no touch, we're talking about the rules of the haunt. Yes. Incidental, accidental contact happens in every haunt.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable.
And you try to, in the no-touch haunts, that's, like you say, it's the official rule, but you try to, only have a bubble around them, and then they might run into you or something like that, but that's
things
not official.
Happen, and that's fine. That's not what we're talking about.
You're talking about the official policy.
Of grab and touch and so forth. Yes.
Right. Did you find that, because I know that some of the reviews of the Eastern State Penn, whenever they had the lighted necklaces, they got such a different experience that the other people felt they didn't get an experience at all.
You know what?
Did you find that?
The place I worked in Salt Lake City, which was called Fear Factory. I only worked there a few times because I was doing a lot of other stuff when I was there. But what I found is that they really did have a kind of a well, in my opinion, better. But a lot of times people specifically choose to not do that because they don't want to do that. They want to be like on the outskirts. And so like they, like I was talking about last week, where there was this room where they had like a cage.
Right.
And they could open up the cage, put people in it, like lock them in there and be like, all right, say goodbye to your people. And then they'd push the people ahead. And they only did that if you had the light up necklace.
Okay.
So if you had the light up necklace, then you get to go in the cage. If you didn't, then they're not going to touch you. So they're not going to put you in the cage. Yeah. And so that's kind of an interesting experience that you might get to have if you consented to that, but if you didn't, then it's kind of like, oh, it's unfortunate.
The reviews were expressing frustration that the actors focused exclusively on the people.
No, that's true. I mean, I saw that, and I even did that, myself, because, you feel like you can escalate a little bit more with them, and it's harder when you have that bifurcation going on, when there are some people that you can grab, you can kind of get to the next level, and then there are other people where you have like a bubble around them, then you naturally are drawn to that. And I agree with that review completely.
Okay, so you would suggest for haunt owners to make it one way or the other and not really in between?
Or maybe not a choice. Or some days be one way or some days be another?
I would almost say that, I don't even think that's necessarily always the bad thing. It's just something to be aware of.
Well,
it's like you can choose to do that, but be aware that this may be, for everything there are drawbacks, and there's nothing's perfect. So in some ways that's a positive, because you do get kind of the best of both worlds for people. But then in some ways it's a negative, because if you choose to do that, then you're going to get that going back and forth. So like you're saying, there's pluses and minuses.
Right.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to working at haunts that allow physical contact, what are some of the common rules around that physical contact?
So what I would always say, when I was working in Minneapolis at this haunted house called the Soap Factory, is in the haunted basement in the Soap Factory. The Soap Factory is the art gallery. And I started training.
Soap Factory is an art gallery. The art gallery basement's a haunted house.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay. Make sure we're clear on this.
Yeah. And so what I would tell people is I'd say, and I was training actors kind of by the end there, and I would say limbs, focus on limbs, your legs, your arms. No torso. Torso's off. Right. Because it's too difficult, That said, I would sometimes, when I was a clown, do a tickling thing where I'd go for their middle. Right. And that was that I felt comfortable that I knew how to do that. But whenever I was telling anyone else, I said those were the rules. I'd say their arms, grab their hands, the legs especially. That's a great way to do it, because people aren't expecting that, as we were talking about too. When you get elevated levels, you get some people really high, some people are low. When they're low, if you can go after their legs, then they're like, whoa, and they're jumping up and they're trying to and people don't expect that. So that's usually what I would say as a rule, especially to start with. Now, what gets tricky is that there are a lot of people who don't necessarily follow that. Yeah, and that's where it definitely gets tricky, and there are problems that can develop from that as well. Yeah. Again, it's trade-offs, Yeah. You can do this. There's an extreme level of that comes with that, and it elevates it to a certain level, but then you got to deal with a lot more consequences on that as well, So I understand why a lot of haunts are shaky and don't want that,
Now, the main reason I think haunts are shaky and uncertain about it is just pure legal reasons at the end of the day.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you open yourself up to a lot of lawsuits.
I don't even know, and I'm just going to talk about this because who cares, but I don't even know, I haven't signed anything, but at the Soap Factory, at the haunted basement, we had a problem. Because there's a guy who's a creepy dude, super weirdo. Everyone knew
a weirdo and a haunted house?
No. Bad weird. It's always hard too, because we would call ourselves in the haunt there. We'd call ourselves the creeps. Yeah, right. And then we're but they're bad creeps. It's we're the good creeps. This guy was not a good guy. And then what happened is so we had this year where we built coffins and we put people in the coffins. Right. And then we'd get in the coffins with them. Right. And so very rife with possible problems. So there was a guy, unfortunately, who probably did, but he took that opportunity to grope this woman who was in there, and then she pressed charges.
Yeah.
She pressed charges against the haunt, and it did kind of threaten. The lawsuit eventually just kind of disappeared and went away. But it was very kind of scary because that threatens your entire operation.
Right.
And it only takes one lawsuit.
Oh yeah, of course. And even if one lawsuit, that gets out of the media didn't talk about it, didn't get out. I mean, it is now, but whatever. Yeah. That haunt is kind of closing down anyway. But yeah, so that was a problem, and you got to deal with that,
Right, and you could see that being a problem in other places, and maybe that's something that haunts should consider if you're going to do a full touch haunt, is to do background checks on your actors and make sure that they don't have any, thing like that in their past.
Yeah. And to be clear, these types of issues can come up at no touch haunts too. There was a story from last year about the haunt. I don't remember what state it was in now. I'm drawing a blank. Where some customers allege several clowns attacked them with like dildos and stuff, and that's pretty terrifying.
Well, and even in not haunts,
in many ways, yeah. Even if it wasn't violating in that way.
Yeah,
I think I had a nightmare about it the other night.
even not in haunts only, but there's been a couple of cases in theme parks where people dressed as characters.
Like
when appropriately.
Oh, that's
So you got to be careful with that.
You hear about that and you're like, that's so devious. That's like you're like, man, that's awful. And stop being. I would have never thought of that.
Right.
Stop being so genius about your evil.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're so creative with your evil. Yeah. That's the worst thing. But
how
also,
can you even feel through those big paws?
Yeah,
really?
hey, oh dang!
No, that's fine.
You can swear, yeah.
We had the explicit tags.
I was like, oh, no, I could screw that one up, but no,
I forgot to mention we had the explicit tags.
Yeah,
You're okay.
You're fine.
But it was really, that was a big problem that developed, and then actually they kind of did a whole review process, and they booted the guy out who had the complaint against them. He's not even allowed on the premises anymore, but of the art gallery even either, but the whole kind of process really shook everyone. And then for the rest of that season, that I think was 2011, that rest of that season, we all were kind of it kind of affected us. And so you do have this as a potential problem that it's really hard because it's trade-offs,
Yeah, and I do think that there's a potential for this problem in any situation.
Yeah. But,
the haunt industry, most of the people that it draws, we're not normal. No. We're not. And we think differently. So I think there's a higher risk. Not the Steve Jobs way.
But we're good.
There might be a higher risk.
Yeah, and you get this, this dual thing, right? Because, some of my favorite people that I meet, I always say, if you want to go meet great people, then work at your haunted house.
Oh yeah,
great
people.
That's where you're gonna meet each Minneapolis here, whatever. This is where I meet my friends in a lot of places now. Is I'm well, I'm gonna go work at the haunt, see who I meet there, and so you get a lot of great people. The dark side of that is that you get some people who they don't quite get it, and they think that this is almost a little too real, and so you get people like this guy who. I'm pretty sure was probably not his first offense of doing these kind of creepy behaviors.
Right.
And then it gives him almost an outlet where he's kind of almost accepted as oh, we'll just kind of push it. And it does encourage that a little bit of escalation, especially if you touching is part of it. It's you can kind of grab people. But the side fact of all of this too is that it leads to some really great scares. And it's hard to, kind of balance it because, you do get some incredible scares that can happen,
And touching, we talked previously about sensory levels, but impacting people on different senses.
Yeah.
We routinely talk about, sight and coming into people's sight. We talk about sound, shouting, screaming, loud noises. We talk about smells and scents and how you can impact people that way.
Right.
But one of the things you don't get a lot of in your average haunt is tactile.
Yeah.
Because you're not encouraged to touch the props.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're not encouraged to touch the actors.
Yep.
You go around and you might feel some strings and some air gusts and things like that, but you don't get a lot of tactile sensation from it. A touch haunt definitely ramps that element up.
Yeah, I mean, when, for example, were you going to say something? When, for example, I built a room in this place in Minneapolis where it was like a kid's craft room. We had like
What's up with you and furries and craft? Should I be worried about being alone with you?
Yes, you probably should. But yeah, no, but what we did was it was these adults who were like these, grew up in this like abandoned kids' craft room. So it's like they had a childlike sensibility, but they were adults. Mm-hmm. And I gave everyone a staple gun, real staple gun, no staples. I would test. I'd say every single time I'd do 16 staples. I'd check like 1,000,000 times, make sure there's nothing in there, and I would put it in there. I staple a bunch of stuff, and I was like, okay, there's no staples in it, and I would give it to people, and we would use them on people. We'd go up to them,
to the customers,
cha-chunk, and there are a few, I knew, for example, I built this room. I knew what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And people would do that to me. And I still would be like, if someone puts a staple gun to you and goes chunk, you're like, oh my God, get away. It's so visceral, but we were a bunch of crazy people. I didn't learn about all these rules and safety regulations until after I was not in Minneapolis anymore. We really were doing some stuff that I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have done that. But we were just doing these things.
And if anyone wants to know how bad it is to actually be stapled, watch some old ECW videos and see professional wrestlers put staples in each other's foreheads.
Yeah, exactly. And so
it's not pleasant.
So yeah, that's, and man, you'd get the most hardened people that were just screaming and trying to get away because it's so visceral and tactile, like you said, to have thing happen.
As we were talking last time, it sort of bucks the trope because the chainsaw's the trope. Yeah. I don't think there's a trope for staple guns.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it's
okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that was really difficult to because I learned then I'm like, wow, that's, what if a staple got caught in there? I did it 20 times, and then you do it once, and then it goes out to the person, and then and then now I just stapled an actual person, So that's probably not recommended at home.
And that does bring up another point of the difference between actors touching customers and using props.
Yeah.
Because props are safer than actors.
Unless it's a staple gun.
Well, yeah.
But for the most part,
chainsaw with the blade.
Yeah, exactly. But you do. That is true. I hadn't really thought about that because there are probably a lot of haunts where they will allow you bring this kind of plasticky sword or something like that against someone, and it's that's
or feathers, in dark hallways.
Well, then there's also the idea of blowing on people too.
Right.
Because a lot of people, they get around the touch rules by blowing on you. And, say what you will about that, but that's another way that people will, you're not... Because
you feel a warm breath on the back of your neck, you're going to react.
Yeah. I do that a lot in a lot of rooms where they say no touching. Right. You just kind of gently blow on someone's ear and they're like, what's that? And then they look and your face is right there. Mm-hmm. Then they freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's multi-levels. It's, you treat it as a binary, but obviously there are a lot of levels as well. So.
And most haunts that I find that do allow touching do have rules and regulations as to how far you can go with it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just a free-for-all, do what you want with the customer.
Well, for the one in Salt Lake City, then they would... like I said, they had those bans for the people coming in, but also the people that were allowed to touch these people all had to go through a training. And so there was a training that you had to go through.
That's very smart.
And so only certain people could touch certain people that go through.
Right.
So it's kind of narrows it down and provides a level of safety.
Yeah.
I mean, and the one that we did in Minneapolis, I was... Basically, I was kind of the training for everyone. And
that's worrisome to me.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, so I was saying, and I would tell people too, I'd be like, limbs. Go for limbs because you're a lot safer.
Well, and what you're trying to avoid is accidental sexual...
I mean, I've done that on accident a few times, I mean,
and it's
like,
type of thing is going to happen at a touch haunt.
It's completely on accident, and there's a when I kind of one of the reasons why I kind of stopped doing more of the tickling stuff is because too many times people when they get tickled they duck down really quick.
Yeah.
And with women especially, it's like you're like
whoops,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, and then like you kind of, and then when that happens, so awkward because you don't want to break character, but you also like want to apologize profusely.
Right.
So like a lot of times I was doing this when I was a clown, so I'd just be like, oops, sorry, and then I'd run away. And
that's
then, like,
worse. Somehow that is actually worse.
Yeah. And so I'd like run away, like to be like, give you your space. Cause like if I accidentally molest you then I don't want to be like, no, I'm going to keep scaring you. I'm going to be like, okay, now I'm going to go to the other side of the room. So you know that was an accident.
Yeah.
And if you're able to kind of people are usually pretty forgiving because they're like, oh, okay, I know I'm going through a touch haunt. I know that maybe this will happen, and so like,
well, and that brings up another point is of the customers knowing that they're going through a touch haunt. My problem is when haunts advertise that they are no touch haunts, but they actually tell their actors to touch the customers.
Oh, well, that's just disingenuous.
Yeah. That to me just shouldn't happen.
We won't name the House of Shock by name.
No.
Well, they have done it in recent years. This was a while ago, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there's the other problem of and we get a little bit of different treatment because
and that's the other thing is, and we can't really say if that's the normal experience. The haunt reviews, but also a couple of times we had that experience we were going through with other haunt crews.
Right, exactly.
And obviously haunt crews do get treated differently.
They escalate.
So I recognize that.
Now, from our safety video, going back to safety podcast, going back to that.
Safety video.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm so used to
101.
We were just talking about the video reviews, okay? Give me some slack.
But
But
all good.
when we went over to Mississippi, one of the haunts there did use a real knife, and they were no touch, and they did touch me.
Yeah.
And they put the knife on my neck.
Yeah.
Now, me being a haunt person, haunts are safe for me, so I did not react, which should probably worry me more than it does. But you should never, ever, ever do that.
No, of course not.
Ever.
No. I mean, that's what, I
don't care how much you're trying to scare
especially
somebody.
some of these budget, lower ends, like the one I worked for, in Minneapolis, it's like a budget thing. And we would just like use actual shovels. We'd use actual pipes.
Right.
We'd use actual stuff, slam it against the wall. And like you look back and you're like, whoa, like that was probably not okay what we were doing.
Yeah.
And then you don't really, because you're just kind of like, that's how I learned it,
Well, you can use real stuff in the appropriate context.
Yeah. But like,
if it's anywhere near the customers, that's not the appropriate context.
Yeah.
There's
and the Boy Scout haunt we went to, there was a ghoul room we had in there. Which the idea was, you come into this room, there's like a audio thing on the loudspeakers, the little kid telling you a story.
Sure.
Then the lights go out, and then me and a bunch of other ghouls appear in the room.
Yeah.
And we knew how to surround the group because the guy would funnel the group into a little ball in the center of the room. So we would just surround them. Yeah. And we had fucking real weapons, man. We were armed with like actual swords and stuff.
Yeah. And then you're like, you gotta like kind of keep your distance too. You can do like so close, but
I'm like, you can't see the room we're in, but we're all about like 3 or 4 feet apart from each other. Yeah. This was as close as I ever got to anyone, and I still look back on that going, how the crap was I using a real sword?
I used to have a shovel, that I would like swing against the wall, and I could get like sparks if I did it just right.
Yeah.
And then like, of course, ill-advised, do not do this in your home. But
this is a big do not do.
Yeah, this is the like don't do.
Yeah.
But I would like go really close to people and they'd like see the sparks like right there. And I was like looking back, I mean that was like my first year working there. And I was just like free for all, it's all good.
Yeah.
I can't hurt anyone, no one can get hurt. We're invincible.
It's different from what you do with a shovel,
which is drag it behind me.
Oh yeah, and that's honestly, I think that's better.
Yeah,
like it's the sound is creepier.
I can't do the sound,
and that's what you're saying too. Is like, at what point do you do touch? Because if you do it all the time, it gets old, and then people are not shocked by it. It's a way again of setting an expectation and then breaking that expectation. Where you know, if you can sparingly do it, then that's really the most effective. Right. And if you can sparingly and safely do it, it's super effective. But if you're like doing it, and that was one of the things that, you know, you get this escalation, a bunch of people that are there, and you get this escalation of all these people that are there, and these people then they start getting really crazy and start escalating and going on top of each other. Right. Yeah. And then you got a dangerous situation that kind of brews, you know, because then you start to have the, you know, people jumping in coffins, and then they're closing them in coffins. You have no idea what they're doing in there, and you're like, so that's kind of
because then the actors kind of take over, and it's a mob mentality almost, where they want to up-one it.
Yeah, and I think you hinted at something that touch haunts need to do, which is you talk about the coffin and how nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, I know, right?
So if you and I are stuck in this coffin together, and something happens, it's your word versus my word. Yep. And that's going to look pretty crappy when the lawsuit gets filed, because they're going to believe the customer over the haunter. Yep. What you need is video camera coverage everywhere touching might be taking place.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's because then you have transparency, and then you really can know exactly what's going on in your haunt.
Yeah, I mean, you should have ideally a security camera coverage everywhere in your haunt. Period.
But definitely where you know the
touching's going to take place. Like triple definitely there.
Yeah, and let the actors know too that there are video cameras and they're being watched. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
This is being recorded.
Well, you know, there's this other interesting topic that comes about all of this when you were talking about advertising, because not only is it about the advertising in terms of what the actors do, but the way that people respond to a touch versus not touch haunt. Right. The patrons that go through are more aggressive and more, because what we would say in Minneapolis, what we'd say at the Haunted Basement, we'd say, the actors can touch you. You cannot touch the actors. And then we go, that's not fair. And we go, too bad.
Fair?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Don't care. Too long didn't read. You know, like, you know, we just don't care. And then, you know, it was kind of like a funny little banter.
We used to describe it as strip club rules.
Yeah, exactly. They can touch you. You can't touch them. And so people, you know, what would happen though, a lot of times, you know, we would have people who would drink a lot, they'd go through, and then they feel like, oh, well, they're touching me, and like implicitly, even though they were specifically told not to, there'd be like an implicit, tacit agreement that then, oh, well, I can kind of grab them too, I can do this. So then I did notice that was happening a lot. More during the touch haunts is the actors were a little bit more there's a little bit more aggression, and you always deal with that to a certain extent. There are like crazy people that go through that, like, you know, punch you.
Everybody's got their story getting punched working in a haunt. Everyone's got it.
Literally.
Male, female, even little kids probably.
Yeah, everyone's you know, punching everyone, you know. But like
except the actors are the ones getting punched, not everyone punching everyone.
Oh yeah, that's true, yeah. I mean, well, I hope that the actors aren't punching people. You got that's a whole new level of problems that you got at your haunt if the actors are punching people.
The talk about McCamey Manor comes later. That's a later episode.
But, you know, like, I did notice that, you know, like here in New Orleans, like, you know, it gets a little crazy here, and, you know, I see a lot of it. But then the haunts that I've worked at here are very, you know, y'all's haunt, also being at the mortuary, like, are for the most part very, you know, kind of calm, kind of easy. There are those incidents, but I remember when I was in Minneapolis, like, there was like a nightly event that would happen. Yeah. And I think that was because there was this kind of tacit agreement, but also because maybe it was a little bit more DIY too. Like, you know, you have like this kind of like long, big haunt, and, you know, there's like touch allowed. I think I probably told you about like weird sexual touch that the patron did to me that, where like, a woman grabbed me down there.
Down there.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And
I wish this was a video podcast so you can see the face he made as he said that. It was beautiful. Down there.
Down there, you know. And she grabbed me, and I was like, woo, you know, like, and so like you get a little bit more like a higher level from the audience too, and that's something you
Right.
may not expect
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, what character were you playing
Do
that
you
she
want the whole
thought
story?
that was okay? Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
I don't
So,
remember this
okay,
one.
so
You Tarzan?
furry fetish room, furry fetish room.
God.
Oh, okay.
I'm dressed up as the victim. The
Right.
victim is in
The duct tape and all that.
yeah, duct tape over my mouth. I'm in a dirty onesie, only wearing that.
yeah.
Boxers, dirty onesie, that is all. And it's open, and it's too small for me.
Uh-huh.
It's open, too small for me because it's a furry fetish room. I have stuffing coming out of the whole thing.
Right.
And the whole thing that I would do is I would sometimes the tormentor would take that, put it in there, and I would just orgasm wildly while they put that in there.
Yeah.
And I would have people put stuffing in me sometimes.
Yeah.
And these two girls were super drunk, and I walk up and I'm like, here's this, and I would sometimes give them the stuffing and motion for them to put it inside, and then
Yeah.
be like, oh, like that,
Yeah.
and just kind of be creepy and weird in that way. And then while I was doing that, he was the startle and distract,
Right.
distract and startle. He would jump out and jump out at them. So I go and do that. She goes to put it in my onesie, reaches all the way down, and does just a little squeeze, just one little squeeze. And then she starts laughing. She knew exactly what she was doing. She just grabs it, skin on skin, reaches in my boxers, grabs it, just does one squeeze, and then starts laughing. And I was like, because I had duct tape over my mouth, so
Right.
I was like, and then I just kind of froze because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do at this point.
Right.
And so then she laughed with her friend, and they ran off. But I was like,
Well, I mean,
that's an experience you don't get very often,
we,
Yeah.
we laugh and we really shouldn't because it is a kind of sexual assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
Obviously, and that's the reason I feel comfortable laughing.
Yeah,
Obviously,
exactly.
you're not.
I'm not.
Well, it was a long time ago, and you were telling it with a laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, if
But
that
in the
happened
moment,
to
it's pretty
if that
startling.
happened to someone else
Yeah.
that was very very uncomfortable with that.
And the story illustrates a point that I think we need to harp on here, which is if you are going to do a touch haunt, you not only need to vet your actors better, but you need to vet your customers better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every haunt has the no drunk people rule, but every haunt I've ever worked at, been to, has been kind of lax on it.
Well, of course.
Well,
Because they need the money and they need the customers.
it's not only that, but I know that whenever we have drunk people show up, we let the actors know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Hey, these guys are pretty inebriated. We need to treat them a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And make sure they don't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's always.
You are so curious.
Yeah, we're always like, wait,
No,
Crystal, what were
please,
you gonna say? And you're like, no, you.
No, you.
It's I'm like, okay, fine. Well, if you're gonna give me the reins, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that, especially with the touch haunts that I've worked at, I've really seen that there's the audience pushback is heavier, and that's I'm not sure exactly. I guess like you say, you could enforce rules and say oh, we're gonna make sure that no one's drunk. If someone's too drunk, then they don't get to come through. Things like that. But for the most part, it's very difficult to.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's not always the drunk people.
Yeah,
the sober ones do it too.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 quick thoughts on this. I think that in New Orleans, because we do have a drinking culture here, and I think that a little bit,
maybe a little bit, yeah.
So I think that drunks here are different than drunks in most other places.
Yeah,
because we know how to control ourselves better.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because we drink all the time here.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point.
And so I think I think that might play into that some.
Yeah. And what's your second point?
Well, I thought you were going to.
Oh, I was going to, but then I was
No,
like,
go ahead.
I'm being courteous to you now.
Continue because
we're so courteous here.
Yes.
So you're second.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, because what I was going to say too is, as I've noticed that as well, is there's definitely what the saying is, it's a marathon, not a sprint, you know?
Right.
Because, like, people are like, yeah, I know how to drink for the long haul, and you get the tourists who come in here.
Right.
And I see them all the time on my tours that I run.
Yeah.
Where they're like, we're going to go to Bourbon Street, we're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
And then they go to Bourbon Street, and they're like, whoa.
An hour later,
they're like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was like, you know?
They're done.
Yeah.
Pro tip for those wanting to make the drinking lifestyle: do not get the hand grenade.
Yeah. That when
Any
you
of
put
the specialty
Everclear,
drinks.
Yeah.
then it's a dicey proposition, you know.
No, the other thing I was going to say was actually a story that Ellie told. She was Dot in Dot Room.
Okay, yeah.
And they had a customer come up and poke her in the eyes on purpose because they could see her eyes.
That's all.
It just so she actually had them evicted from the park because this was inside of a park. So, you know, make sure that customers know that is a possibility. If they touch your actors and they're not supposed to, then they're going to get kicked out
police,
and enforce it.
Like, you can even say, like you're not going to get kicked out. You're going to file the charges filed against you.
Right.
You're going to have a lawsuit. You know, escalate it. Say, like, we're not going to kick you out. You're going to have to deal with the police at that point.
Right.
Because then that puts the fear of God into them a little bit more.
Right.
Because if they're just like, cool, well, then I leave, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we say that, but then, you know, haunts like, you know, terror tests that really harp on that get kind of annoying. But then again, terror test was a no-touch haunt, and it didn't really need to harp on those rules quite so hard.
Yeah.
You know, there's a time and a place you really do have to impress upon the rules, and that was not one of them.
That's true too.
But so
yeah, that was when we showed up and they said no touching. If you touch any of our products or our actors, the cops will be called.
Yeah,
you know,
as you said. I mean, that's what you do because you gotta like really put the fear of God into people.
I think that's the only place we've gone through a metal detector to go inside of a haunt too.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we did the metal detector. I don't think there was a metal detector.
I thought there was.
Maybe.
I thought there was.
Maybe you just went through the metal detector.
Maybe.
You're like, Crystal, I don't know.
I know.
You're in trouble.
I know one time we went there and we were frisked.
Yeah.
Was that part of the haunt?
No.
Was that on your own personal time? Yeah, no. I mean, part of the thing, though, about all of this, it's you know, we're talking about security and we're talking about like making sure that people are safe, and it's like I keep harping on, it's this trade-off, you know. It's like you can choose to do that. If you choose to do that, like you do get like a level of intensity that is unforeseen, but without it you can't really get there.
Yeah.
Because there's a new level of threat that exists.
Yeah.
You know, if you can grab people, if you can like, you know, like then you're now invading them on a new level. And it's not psychological anymore. It's not visual. It's not auditory. But then there's a lot of risks to be taken there.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the issues that you run into if you do want to operate a touch haunt is insurance. Yeah. Is either going to be way more expensive or nearly impossible to get.
Yeah, we probably didn't even have insurance.
You're probably going to be taking the legal risk wholly on the chin. Yeah. Right. Whatever that risk may be. And the thing is this, and this is something from another haunted. This was on Return to the Living podcast. They were talking about this. A attorney, I believe it was in St. Louis, specializing in haunted house injuries.
Yeah.
And so it's like, really, that's a thing. Yeah. This is how you scare haunters.
Yeah. Yeah. Like haunted house people saying they got injured in the haunted.
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's also like, I mean, the number of times that like I've been hit or something like that has happened to me, but then like I just kind of look the other way. Yeah. Because I'm like, you know, like what it's incidental or they accidentally did that. Yeah. Or even if they intentionally did it, but like I'm kind of just not feeling it. I was working in Salt Lake City and I was doing like kind of a freeze, like kind of statue thing where like I just kind of it wasn't even like they thought it was a statue. I just kind of, there was a time period where I just would just stay and then like wait a very long time because they'd have long groups go through because I told you it was super busy. It's super busy right there. And they'd have super long groups and I would just kind of stand right there and just kind of look like a little intimidating, kind of like do this. Yeah. And then all of a sudden go after one person. You know, because then they think like, oh, who's this guy? He doesn't do anything. And then like halfway through the group, you go after the person. And so I was doing that. And this one kid, punk kid, 14 years old, like looks at me, he's like, he's not a statue. And then he slaps my face. And I mean, like punk kid, 14, like thinking he's cool. Man, I flipped out. And that was the touch haunt, and he had a thing around him. So I grab him, throw him against the wall, and I was like, "You do not touch," because then I it was really intense about it. Yeah. But it's really like that level of touch, like what's acceptable, like how I kind of went over the line. I feel like a little bit because like I was so intense, but I was so mad that like what do you do in that level where there's a lot of times things that are happening that you gotta like, how do you control all of those different levels?
Yeah. And like you said before, putting the fear of cops and legal action into your customers is always an option.
Really helpful.
We actually had this problem in the line this year. Our outside character, Chris, was dressed as a big knight, and this little 4 or 5-year-old kept coming up and kicking him in the leg. Yeah. And he told him not to. And
he started off with the gentle stuff, like, please stop.
Yeah. Okay, you're done.
We're good. You're done now.
Yeah, and then tell the parents, make the kid stop kicking me. Yeah. And then they just laugh. So he's like, look, if he touches me one more time, I'm calling the cops and I'm restraining you guys. So it's like,
I mean, really, it's always the bigger issue of safety again, too.
Right.
Like, how do you want to push the boundaries? You want to get to a new extreme. You want to be it a little bit more, but you don't want to be, as you're saying, McCamey manner or anything like that. You don't want to. I mean, presumably, somebody
wants to be McCamey manner.
I mean, McCamey doesn't want to be McCamey manner. Yeah. But you want to try something new, try this, and that's why I think that almost touching, the best way to do it is in unique, interesting ways. Brush your fingers on their arm hair or something like that. Men, oftentimes what I would do too is, I'm not gay, but you'd see a straight man who's very masculine bro dude, and you get very close to them. Yeah. And that brings a new level of discomfort. You don't sexually grope them or anything, but you're just you interfere in their bubble.
Space,
and I actually found that was almost more effective than anything else when I would lightly brush my hand on their arm.
Yeah.
And then because you just feel their arm hair like that, they're like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
They're like, no, because there's this kind of, latent homophobia going on, and you're just like, no, and that kind of freaks those dudes out a little more than anything, Yeah. And, get creative with it. It's not about, how violating it can be. It comes back to this general property of how creative can you be,
Right.
And so if you can find a new way, brush their fingertips or pet their head, just pet their hair.
Start holding their hand in a dark hallway.
Exactly. That's a good one, you can do that.
Yeah.
And when you can find these ways of using touch that isn't oh, I'm going to grab you. Oh, I'm going to do this.
You don't have to take people, slam them against the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just it. From a safety standpoint and from a potential lawsuit standpoint, holding someone's hand is not...
It's not that dangerous.
It's not that dangerous. You're not really ramping it up in terms of danger level.
Maybe in the 1920s.
But you are adding that tack on this, or adding that extra layer to the scare.
And if you have a character that would do that's part of what
that's what the little girl should have done.
Yeah. And then hold your hand with you.
Dude!
Yeah, no, get off me. Yeah. Or brush someone's hair or something like that, but then you got a whole lice thing. Who knows? But you do something that's just, the general idea is you use this as a creativity outlet.
Right.
And not violence outlet, really.
Right. And that's the thing, is I remember once going, I think it was the House of Shock, someone dressed in a pig mask.
Naturally.
Put their face in my sternum and pushed me against the wall. And I'm just saying, look, I'm not allowed to touch you. I have nothing that I can do here. Yeah. I'm trapped against the wall. We're at a stalemate.
Yeah.
I'm not scared because I'm a haunter.
Yeah.
We've reached an impasse here. You're going to have to let me go so I can continue the haunt.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a lot of times...
But I think what you're saying is like the brushing of the arms would have been way scarier than that super aggressiveness.
And to be honest, a lot of times, like, it's not... I'm maybe painting an unfair picture because, you know, we put people in these coffins, we get in there with them.
Yeah.
Probably half the time, there's just someone in there like, okay,
how do I get out?
And, you know, like, okay.
Hi, my name's Dan.
Yeah, like, they're not scared. They're not, you know, they know what they're getting in for. So it's not like a constant, you know, shit show, everyone's scared all the time sort of thing. It's just like, oh, hi, how are you? So, like, you got to really kind of decide how much is this worth it, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Because everybody's going to react differently. And that's with any kind of scare.
But that's what we talk about, too, is, like, everyone's scared by different things, right?
Yeah.
Everyone goes through a haunt. And so, like, one person can say that was the most terrifying thing ever, and the other person say I wasn't scared once.
Right.
And it's the same exact haunt, the same exact experience, and it's because we have different fears, different ways we go about it, different perspectives we even come into it with.
Yeah.
And so the more you can hit all of these different things, and the more you can kind of test people and in many different ways and see what poke and prod them, and then see what kind of scares come out, then you can kind of like play with that. And so it's like, that's a lot of times why I think breath is really important in a haunt. Is like, you know, touch is a great tool you can use.
Right.
Do it sparingly. Don't rely
and don't be super aggressive with it.
Yeah, don't be super aggressive, but if you can do it sparingly and you can make it a creative thing, then it can be a great tool. Put it in your tool belt, you know?
And one quick thing on no-touch haunts. Whenever you advertise that you are a no-touch haunt, you also need to advertise that accidental touching may occur.
Oh, that's true.
Because we advertise that we're no-touch. And the few occasions that accidental touching has happened, or we had a new person and we, you know...
Stuff happens, is what it comes down to.
First night, oh shoot, we forgot to tell them not to grab the customers or whatever. Then people get really upset. And they're like, you touched me, even if it's like just stumbled against them, you know?
Yeah. Accidentally, look, and this is the thing, you're in a dark space, you're in close quarters, you're going to bump into people. Welcome to the real world. May I take your order, please?
But I mean, it takes them out of the rest of the experience because they're so involved in the fact that you said you weren't a touch haunt and then you accidentally
That may be something to consider, though, is, okay, fine, be a no-touch haunt, but like you were talking about, brushing the arm hair and so forth, do that with a feather.
Yeah, exactly.
Find other ways to bring that tactile level in. They're not expecting it now, and you're not breaking the rules you set forth.
Yeah. Right.
But you're finding a way to bring that level into it.
And you're creating you're toying with their expectations.
Exactly.
Loopholes.
Exactly. Loopholes. They're your best friends. But as you were saying too, like that's actually a great point that I meant to bring up earlier, is the no-touch haunts I find are sometimes harder in a way because you do get these people.
Right.
Any incidental touching, like I can sometimes get really close to people and I won't touch them.
Yeah.
But then like I will accidentally, like they'll run into me and then they get obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're not supposed to touch me. You said you wouldn't touch me.
Exactly.
And then you're like, okay, this scene is ruined. Just go out and move to the next room, you know, because you're not, this is where our new thing that we're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
So like, that's one of the things when they make such a big deal about no touch.
Right.
It's almost like you got to just like, not even say no touch, but just like you say only incidental touching allowed, or you know, like only, or something like that, where you just
no deliberate touching, but accidents happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you make it like that, then people are gonna go, "Oh, okay, well, they said that."
But
if you say actors will not touch you, and then you know, chasing after someone, you turn around and there's someone behind you, and you
that's happened.
And so many times.
Or
then everyone's like, "Wait, you said you wouldn't touch me," and then you're like, "Okay, well, you're not going to get scared now because that's where your brain is."
Going back to that closet I was talking about, I remember a few times I'm chasing this group's moving through the closet really fast, right? And so I'm chasing after them, and then the last kid in the group suddenly senses something's behind him.
Yeah.
So rather than like doing the smart thing and moving faster, he stops like a deer and it's like, what's going on? And then, bam, like crash into him.
Oh, man.
Nothing worse than being a guy in a morph suit on his ass in the ground in a closet. I'm just telling you.
I mean, and like all actors, all people have like so many stories of like scares gone wrong.
Oh god,
we probably have more stories of scares gone wrong than scares gone right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you try and if you're putting yourself out there and you're like being really active, you're probably gonna like get banged up in one way or another.
Right.
And so like. Those things are just going to happen, and so you just got to kind of be aware of. I mean, that's such a good point where you have a no touch haunt, and you got to like make it clear that like this is gray, everything's gray. Like
we will not deliberately touch you, but this is real life.
That's true.
Yeah. That's something that I think we have to get better about impressing that too.
Yeah.
But I think most no-touch haunts do, because most no-touch haunts really do harp on the "you don't touch us, we won't touch you" thing.
Yeah.
And that is not 100% accurate ever.
When I was working at the mortuary, that was a big issue. I remember I actually struggled with that probably more than anything, because like I told you, I would do this thing where like people would go underneath my legs, and then I would jump down. And I would jump down, and sometimes they'd be holding hands, and then I'd jump down like right next to their hands, or like sometimes accidentally on their hands. Yeah. And then they'd be like, "You said you wouldn't touch," and I was like, "Oh, just calm down. Like we're fine, Like obviously I wouldn't say that. That wouldn't be very scary. Just calm down, But
okay, calm down. Yeah, don't use that line in a haunt.
Unless you can find a character to do that.
Yeah, unless they're
lovingly stroking their hair, saying "calm down." That might be like a good one.
Or maybe like a psychologist's room. Okay, calm down. Everything you've seen up to this point has all been in your mind.
Yeah, you have to like actually, like do. And then they walk into a room that looks just like their own bedroom. Yeah, and they're like, "Oh no."
Yeah. But yeah, so I think the main point to get across is that touch can be very effective, especially if it's used sparingly and in limited ways. Yeah. But, every haunt has to decide if it's worth the risks.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are, and you can do things to mitigate those risks.
Yes.
But there is, once you open the floodgates, there's going to be a certain level of risk that you need to just take on,
Right. And the other problem with the phrasing that you said, "We won't touch you if you don't touch us," is some people want to be touched, so they will touch your actors.
Yeah, that's a very terrible phrasing. You're right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah. So you got to be prepared for that.
That rule is really important.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm front of house at our haunt, and I have had the crap knocked out of me on more than a couple of occasions.
Yeah, I know.
Even at the front of the house?
Yes, I have.
People running back out.
Well, that's
that's right.
There's one year you weren't working there. We had a terrible layout. We had a long hallway right at the beginning, and the very first drop panel was right at the very end of the hallway.
Oh, and they'd run the other way.
They'd run back to the entrance, and I remember one time I'm standing there, I'd let them in, they were out of my head, they were inside the haunt. I'm doing my shtick, I'm entertaining the next group, right?
Come right behind you.
And they came, and they just, they need to play for the Saints, man.
Yeah, they could have used it this year.
We could have used them this year on the Saints.
Yeah.
They hit me. I swear, I did 10 horizontal feet. Yeah. So that stuff happens. And, that's something that as a haunter, you adapt to and you get used to. It's a contact sport in that regard. But at the same time, it's not supposed to be usually that much of a contact sport for the customers.
Right.
True.
So, anyways, any final thoughts on touch versus no touch?
I mean, we've kind of covered it. Like you said, like it's really, like I was saying before, it's trade-offs. You can get some good scares. It can be really unique. It can be really interesting. You got to just have some mitigating factors. You got to have some restrictions. And you got to be really smart about the way you do it. You got to be creative about the way you do it. You can't just be violent.
Right.
Violence is not the answer.
It's not. Violence is never the answer.
Yeah. Except visually, maybe.
Yeah. And then that's just it. It's got to be something beyond, we're going to grab you and take you places.
It kind of comes... Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be something beyond that, though.
And it's always be creative.
Yeah.
It kind of comes down to that. That's one of the things. It's like, do something I've never seen before and do something that people are not expecting.
Right.
And that's just that a touch haunt by itself is not inherently scarier than a no-touch haunt.
Yeah.
It's all about how you use the tools you have.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right?
Sounds good.
On that note, everyone, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
And this was Haunt Weekly, talking about touch versus no-touch haunts. Touch.